So I'm gonna make this crystal clear in the beginning of this video. These are all my opinions. It's okay if you have a different opinion. That's fine. Leave a comment. I'm gonna leave a link to this tier list in the comment section below. And if you guys want to talk about it, like do your own tier list and then drop it in my Discord and we can talk about it there. Otherwise, think what you will. I'm just saying these are the things that I'm gonna go through when I'm making a purchase decision on if I want to buy something or not, outside of being a reviewer, because half the time I'm spending money I take that back, more than half the time, like 90% of the time I'm spending my money to like buy things to review. So if I'm not remotely interested in it, I'm probably not gonna spend my own money on it and buy it. So I have to think that it's good in some capacity before I hit buy to send to my house and then to start to use as a consumer and as a reviewer. I got a lot of keyboards here. I have not reviewed all of these, but I probably reviewed like a good 40% of these keyboards, so I'll leave a link to my keyboard review playlist in the description below to check out if you want to reference anything that I said in the past. Now, this is also going through the journey of being a YouTuber for about 2.5-ish years, so some of my opinions from a year and a half ago are probably a lot different now because I've been exposed to a lot more things and I myself have used a lot more things. So I'm pretty sure that on a lot of these keyboards, as we're gonna go over in this video, my opinions have changed quite a bit because I've been using a lot of different things. I'm gonna try my absolute best to not compare manufactured keyboards to customs, because obviously customs you yourself spend a lot of time building and it's not the same thing. I'm gonna keep that in the back of my head. Rant over. Let's start the video. So we got the tier list here. Customs don't count obviously at the top, and then garbage at the bottom. So like I said, I haven't used all these keyboards, so this video is gonna be a little bit different because I'll probably do like some research while we're filming to see a couple things, you know, like what kind of keycaps they use and XYZ and LMNOP and all that stuff. So let's look right here. So we got the Corsair K100 newly released keyboard. It has like those optical silver, they are silver switches, but they're not like cherry or anything. Like they're made by Corsair, and I'm sure they have like a partner or something. If they came out with a TKL and got rid of the macro pad, I know it's kind of the point of it, but if they got rid of the macro pad and came out with a TKL, it looks pretty good. I believe these keycaps are PBT as well, and Corsair has some really good RGB lighting control with Corsair IQ. So I would put it in A tier. I would put it in S tier if they came out with a 75% version. There isn't a detachable cable to use like for, you know, custom cable and all that stuff, but it's got a USB pass-through as well. And if they kept the USB pass-through on the TKL, that would be fantastic. Now, the top of the keyboard is a little bulky, like the dial and stuff like that. It's cool in concept, but I probably wouldn't use it. But the media keys on the right side are definitely useful. So I would put that in the A tier for sure. This one is the K65. This one is one of their older keyboards. Let's see here. I'll put it in D tier for now, but let's Corsair K65. So the K65 is $130. I'm pretty sure these keycaps are ABS. Last time I used a Corsair keyboard, they were ABS, and I don't think that this has been updated in a while. So honestly, I would keep it in the D tier, not only because of the keycaps, but it's just older design, Cherry MX red switches, which cherry switches are kind of scratchy anyways, and I'm not the biggest fan. Like I think Kale switches and Gaterons are better for sure. I don't really think that Corsair will switch to those because I'm pretty sure they've probably been using cherry forever, and they probably have like some long-standing contract. They do have their own switches now on the K100. So if they came out with a K65 with those new switches, the updated stabilizers that they have on this one, as well as this updated wrist rest, the whole updated design, I would move it up to like A or S tier as well, because obviously, you know, 65% the size is good, but I'm not overly interested in getting a keyboard with cherry switches, horrible stabilizers, and ABS keycaps if I don't have to. So next we have the Razer Black Widow V3 Pro, and this is wireless, double shot ABS keycaps, upgraded wrist rest. I will put this in the A tier. Reason being, it's got these Razer yellow switches. If it's green switches, you guys already know I don't like Razer greens. I don't like blue switches. That junk is going straight in the trash. So anything that doesn't have alternate switch options, for that. I wouldn't even use it. I wouldn't even touch it. But with the yellow switches or even the Razer orange switches, and these double shot ABS keycaps are actually pretty nice. I would consider, especially if I needed like a wireless full-size keyboard, that I do think is pretty fair. This one, to be honest, is the same price as the K100, so I think that's a little bit more stiff competition, I'll say. But I would probably go with the Razer over the K100 if I wanted a little bit more of a somewhat minimalist design. But they're both a bit much, if you know what I mean. Like, they both have like their flashiness and stuff, literally, with the RGB. This one is the Huntsman TKL, or Huntsman Tournament Edition. This one needs its stabilizers upgraded. It needs those new red switches that Razer has. Like, it needs to be redone. After that, it would go in the S tier, I would say, because, you know, the switches are really fast. And you know, if it was quieter, if Razer even put like a piece of foam at the bottom of the keyboard, I would definitely consider it, because it would just feel more solid when you bottom out the keys. But without that, the keycaps, they're fine, but I wouldn't say that they're fantastic. Like, it's a relatively thin-ish PBT, and when you bottom out the keys, it sounds a little hollow too. Where I thought the Huntsman Mini I would put in the S tier, and it could be better if they swapped the stabilizers and added some foam in the bottom. I doubt they would do that, but the stabilizers, I actually thought they sounded okay. But if they swap the stabilizers to be regular stabilizers and be compatible with other keycaps, that would be great, because you got to pull out these little legs in the stabilizers on the entire Huntsman line, and they basically suck. If you want to swap keycaps and swap the stabilizers, it's such a pain, it's not even worth doing. So for the fact that, like, they made some good strides and efforts, you know, having the detachable USB Type-C, switch to a standard bottom row, and all that good stuff to make these keyboards more customizable and accessible to like swap things out, they're almost there. They're almost there. They got to do a little bit better, move the stabilizer just a little bit more, and switch them to be regular. And then this is definitely an S tier. Like Razer, they're really close. The build quality is but you know, it's Razer. It's not really, none of their stuff has the best build quality, I'll say, except for maybe their headsets are decent. But keyboard wise, if you're looking at the Huntsman lineup, the build quality is just kind of The Huntsman Elite, you can only get it with green switches, so it's got a lot of nice features, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. It's just way too loud of a keyboard. It's really annoying. And yeah, oh, you know what, this is the Black Widow V3 or Term Edition. The Black Widow, okay, if you can get the Black Widow without the greens, with the oranges or the yellows, I would put it in the B tier, because it is a pretty solid feeling keyboard, especially with that aluminum top plate. I like that one quite a bit. But if you only can get greens on the Black Widow V3, I would drop it down, because why would you do that? So we have the Steelseries Apex Pro TKL. So this I'm also gonna put in the A tier, because Steelseries has horrible ABS keycaps. Like, they look fantastic until you touch them. As soon as you touch them, they collect all these oils and it just looks disgusting. Like, I don't know why Steelseries has not swapped the keycaps from being ABS to PBT and done a refresh. Like, this Apex Pro TKL, I would stick it in S tier if they swapped out those keycaps to be double shot PBT, shine through, of course, took off the OLED screen and came out with a 60% version. Like, come on, everybody is asking for that. And all of the keys around the main keys aren't even OmniPoint switches anyways, so that needs to happen, and it doesn't seem like it would be too hard. And then on the 60%, they should also have a detachable cable as well. On the 10 keyless, it's fine because it has the USB pass-through, and the OLED screen because it has the space for it, so that's cool. But they should make a 60% version and update those keycaps to be double shot PBT. And this is an easy S tier because it's got those really fast switches, and they're buttery smooth too. Don't even need to be lubed, but the stabilizers do need to be lubed. That's pretty much going to be the case with all of these, until you get to like a Ducky or an Am Pro 2 or a Varmillo, where those are pretty decently lubed in terms of stock. But Apex Pro TKL gets an A tier. I would put in S with those updates though. Apex 7, obviously the Apex 7 is not as good as the Apex Pro TKL, but the red switches on the Apex 7 are similarly smooth to the switches in the OmniPoint switches in the Apex Pro TKL. Very close. Suffers from the same issues though as the Apex Pro because it's the same keyboard, just different switches and a lot cheaper. This Redragon keyboard, personally, I wouldn't recommend it at all. It has some nice features, but it has the USB on the side, which would be fine if the wireless connectivity was decent, but it was horrible and I didn't like it at all. So I wouldn't really recommend this. The keycaps were in. It's 50 to 60 bucks, and for 50 to 60 bucks you can buy a GK61. So there's no reason really to consider this unless a GK61 is sold out or something like that and you really wanted a wireless keyboard, because the GK61 is not wireless until you go up to, I think it's the S or the X version of the GK61. But either way, you can watch my review on that. It's not that great. The Ducky 1-2 Mini, I'll stick in the S tier because they did add KO switch options to the Ducky series. And Duckies, for a plastic board, have the best bottom mount feeling out of any pre-built keyboard, in my opinion. And Ducky keyboards as a whole, like the PBT keycaps that they come with, are all stellar. Like Ducky keycaps are really good. I have a set on order. I think it's the Bon Voyage set and I can't wait to use them. But even the keycaps that come on the keyboard, they're really good. The 1-2 SF, this one is a good option as well, but Ducky, they need to start releasing keycaps that have a compatible right shift button for the 1-2 SF. Supposedly they're supposed to start, but I don't know when that's gonna happen or if it already did, but I haven't really seen any Ducky keycap sets on YouTube, at least, of people saying that, hey, this does have support for the 1-2 SF. So if they can fix that, that would be fantastic, because these boards are great. And I'm like so tempted to buy like one of these, I'll go on mechanicalkeyboards.com so you guys can see, but like one of these limited edition Ducky boards. Hold on here. Oh yeah, right here. This SF Radiant, bro, this board looks so good. And I mean, it's 160 bucks. But for the switch options, Cherry Max Silent Red, if they had the Kale, I think Burgundies, which are like a linear from Kale, I would pick those all day. But they do have it on some of their other Ducky keyboard models, like the 1-2 Mini for sure. And I think the regular SF they do have as well. But this limited edition SF right here, this one as well, they look fantastic for the keycap design. I think it's a mecha. Yep, it's a mecha as well. So yeah, these all day, every day are an easy S tier. Do I have the Ducky mecha in here separately? I don't think I have it separately, but either way, S tier all day for pretty much any Ducky keyboard. They're really good, especially if you get it without the cherry switches. The stabilizers are fantastic. Ampro 2 I will put in the A tier. The Ampro 2, the keycaps, they are double shot PBT, I believe, but they're okay. They're not the best keycaps I've ever used, but the stabilizers in the Ampro 2 are really good. The wireless performance is fantastic, no issues. You can use it while gaming. The software on the Ampro 2 as well is fantastic. Like, you can add a ton of different like RGB layers and effects, different function layers as well for like the magic function if you hold the caps lock key. I like the Ampro 2 a lot. It's probably my favorite wireless keyboard to date. I would put it in the S tier if they came out with an Ampro 2 that came stock with a metal case and hot swap capability. So those two things alone are keeping it from the S tier, but if they update those two things and add better quality double shot PBT keycaps, I would stick it in S tier all day. Like, this is an easy recommend. And if it's like $110, $120 for a metal and wireless keyboard with good keycaps, all day for sure. The Varmillo Maya Pro with the ECV2 switches. So Varmillo's ECV2 switches that are pre-lubed from the factory are some of the smoothest switches that you'll find on pretty much any keyboard stock. Like, I would take this over a 1-2 SF because you'll probably have very limited problems like finding other keycaps and all that stuff. So they should fit, no problems there. And they got better switches than any of the Ducky offerings personally. The Maya Pro, I believe, is built by Ducky or manufactured or something like that. So that could be an option if you're looking for a similar build quality. But even if you were to go with like a 10 kilos from Varmillo, I would stick this in A tier because it doesn't have USB Type-C and it has, I think it's mini USB. It's not micro USB, which sucks because if you want to use a custom cable, you basically can't. You basically can't, because most of them only offer Type-C and micro, and mini USB is just really old and outdated. So they fixed that one issue and they moved the port on the 10 kilos up a lot more to be flush with the back of the casing. That would make it perfect. But Varmillo keyboards as a whole, very impressed with them. The quality is fantastic, but don't quote me on if they're manufactured by Ducky or not, because I can't remember. So next we got the glorious GMMK. So basically they fixed everything that I asked for. They came out with a white version, they added USB Type-C, and they also updated the stabilizers to be better as well stock. So I don't see any reason why this shouldn't be in the S tier, especially when the bare bones version comes out at $70 for a bare bones keyboard kit that you can put your own switches into and everything. That's a really fair deal, especially for a metal build, decent construction, decent stabilizers, and USB Type-C. The only thing I would change about the GMMK is on the PCB, I wish they had support for 5-pin switches without having to cut off the stabilizers on the main switches. Next, the GK61. So personally, I think the GK61 is a really good keyboard. A couple of things that keep it from not being fantastic is the stock stabilizers are you definitely got to go in and re-lube them, and it's not wireless, but they do feature optical switches, and featuring optical switches I think does bump it up a tier, because they're not only optical but they're also hot swap, and you can try a ton of different ones. And a GK61 stock with optical yellows is really good. Like, I didn't know that Gateron yellows were so good, but they're fantastic. I like them a lot. For the price, really can't beat the Switch. I do like the yellows the best out of the silvers and the reds. Video on that coming soon. And after you do a couple simple mods like spray lubing the switches, re-lubing the stabilizers, and adding a little piece of foam in the bottom, basically under $120, like, you can get this keyboard with optical yellows for about 90 bucks. The material to do spray lubing and re-lube the stabs, add some foam in the bottom for about 20 bucks ish. So under 120 bucks, you pretty much have an A-ish S tier keyboard, but I'll put it at A, because the casing, if you swap it to a metal case, that would put it in the S tier. But without it, the software is not good. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, and the build quality is about on par with the AM Pro 2 minus the stabilizers. Next, the SK64 is basically the same thing as the GK61, also available with optical switches, and pretty much is just as good, just the layout is different, so I would give it the same. Now this Motospeed 60, let's look into this one, because I haven't really checked this one out at all. So let's see here. So black keyboard, blue switch, red switches. Okay, so it comes with red switches. It's $50 on sale, and you get an extra 5% off, so not bad. Let's see here. USB, it's got Type-C, it's got wireless, and I wonder what this keycap material is. It looks pretty similar to like the ABS on the GK61. You have to swap out the keycaps on this one too, so I'll actually bump this down to B tier. But the SK64 does come with DICE PBT keycaps, so that's another differentiator. GK61 B tier, you do some upgrades and spend some money, probably 150 bucks on a good keycap set. That'll put it almost at S tier, so that'll put it back at the A tier, but you gotta spend some money for sure. ABS keycaps, yeah. All right, back to the Motospeed. If these keycaps are similar, regular switches, and it is cheaper, granted, let's say the stabilizers are just kind of okay, I'd stick it in the C tier. Like, this is probably a good budget option. The RK61, let's check this one out as well, because I haven't looked at that one either. It looks largely the same. Like, it basically looks like a GK61 clone, but this one does have the USB Type-C in the middle of the board instead of on the right side. Also about 50 bucks. I haven't used them. Would I pick up an RK61? If I was on a really tight budget, I would probably rather get the RK61 over the Motospeed, because that one, it just looks The RK61 looks similar to the GK61, or at least a lot more similar. This one, it does look noticeably cheaper. The Logitech G Pro X, it's nice that it has hot swap, but the casing looks exactly the same as the previous G Pro. and I think the price went up too. Like I think it's like 150 bucks. I would not spend $150 on this keyboard. Logitech, they do have some new switches, like they have like linear, tactile, and clicky switches now, and they're hot swappable, and you can put pretty much any switch, I believe, into the G Pro X now. But I'm pretty sure that the keycaps are the same as the previous G Pro, and I did not like them as well. And then another annoying thing that I noticed about the old G Pro, it had like the worst case ping, so there has to be no foam at the bottom of this keyboard. I at least give glorious props for having a tiny bit of foam at the bottom of the keyboard. It's not that great, but it's better than nothing. Logitech, I would be shocked if I pull this thing apart and there was foam at the bottom, because on the original G Pro, the case ping was absolutely trash. This, I hope that that's been updated. If it has been updated, I will put it solid in the B tier. If not, I don't know. So this HyperX Alloy Elite, I would definitely put this, I put it in S tier, because this board has a ton of value packed into it. So I haven't used it yet, but from what I've seen and heard, like in sound tests and stuff on HyperX keyboards, this one uses these HyperX red linear switches, which some people say that they're very similar to like a Kale Red, and Kale Reds are really, really good. That's like an instant recommend for a keyboard switch. If you want something that's linear, smooth, that you don't have to worry about modding almost at all, the Kale Reds are really good. And if these are similar, then that's definitely excellent. Solid steel frame construction too, so it sounds like it would have a really good build. I've seen reviews of it before and it looked pretty nice. And not to mention that they give you putting keycaps on the board that you don't have to buy separately, and it's only 130 bucks. Like, that is just insane. So this, the value proposition alone, I think is much, much better. Like, I would rather get this in a TKL variant if they had it, over the Apex 7 TKL if they had the TKL of this for the same price. Next, we got the HyperX Alloy Origins Core TKL, 90 bucks. Same HyperX red switches. This one I don't think has a steel frame, but it does have this aluminum body, and personally it looks pretty good. Let's see if these keycaps are double shot PBT too. Let's see. I'm not sure if these keycaps are PBT or double shot ABS or whatever. If these are like good quality double shot ABS, I'll give it a pass, but preferably if these are double shot PBT for the price, for 90 bucks, I would put it also in the A tier. Hopefully it's good. I hope that it is. Maybe I'll check it out at some point, because for $90 it's not a bad deal. And then if you want the tactile version that I think Batsy did a review on, those switches actually sound pretty good. The HyperX Aqua switches, I believe they're called, those were interesting. So maybe I'll check it out at some point. I don't know, probably not. I got a lot of keyboards right now. But let's go on to the next one. So this next one is a new board from Roccat, and then this is the Vulcan TKL Pro. This is going to be using like a Titan optical switch. So let's see here. Is this one, does it say it's linear? If it's linear, I know I'll like it a lot. If it's tactile, I won't hate it. If it's keyless or clicky, I will hate it. 10 keyless finally, because in my review of the original Vulcan, I like the low profile form factor, even though these switches are really tall, so it doesn't really feel like a real low profile keyboard. Personally, I wish the switches were a little bit more low profile, but the travel distance is not bad. I'm actually getting this one for review pretty soon, so we'll have my full opinions on this coming up maybe within the next month or so. But they got a couple knobs on here for like media controls and whatnot, and a button there. And I did like the keycaps the first time I reviewed the keyboard, so as long as those keycaps are similar or the same, I don't think I'll have any issues with them. And I think this also does have a detachable USB Type-C cable, so excellent. Glad that they have that as well. If this keyboard has a good typing feel, I would feel confident putting this also in the A tier, but I wouldn't quite put it in the S tier, because the design, I don't love the aesthetic of this keyboard, but it does look decent and you can make it fit into a setup. But this is definitely 110% like a gamer looking keyboard. So if they came out with one that had a little bit more minimalist design with the same features, and then grant I like it after I actually try it and I review it, then I would go ahead and stick it in the A tier. But with the current design, I don't love it. This is the previous Vulcan. It was a full size and non-detachable cable. It was okay. Wasn't my favorite keyboard though. Yeah, I would put it in the C tier. This, the TKL, that was necessary for sure. So the form factor played a big part in that. The Logitech G915, 10 keyless. So I'll put this one in the B tier. The keycaps were horrible, and it doesn't have USB Type-C, but it does have really long battery life. Clicky switches for once on this keyboard I actually did not mind. They weren't loud and obnoxious. Like, they're pretty satisfying to type on. I like that experience quite a bit. So if they swap this out to PBT keycaps, add USB Type-C, and lower the price to like 180 bucks, I would stick this in the S tier for sure. Because this is a really good board, but it suffers from like some really basic issues that could be fixed without a ton of work. But one more thing I do want to mention about this keyboard, basically just don't pull off the keycaps at all, because if you do, you have a really high chance of breaking the legs on the keycaps. And that was another thing that I didn't like that would also prevent it from going to the S tier, because that kind of sucks if you were to pull off all your switches to clean it and some of the legs broke and now you can't put the keycap back on the keyboard. So they need to redesign the way that the stem connects to the switches. The mass drop alt and control. So we're getting into the somewhat customs, but because this board does come mostly done, I think Bassy said that they did update like the stabilizers and stuff on them, so hopefully they are better than what they used to be, because before they sounded really rattly. This one is pretty unique, where you do have USB on both sides of the keyboard as well, so you can plug it in on either side, which is pretty cool. And then you do have the RGB that goes all the way around the keyboard, and then some decent keycaps. Are like a Suedo custom, and I think they only support 3-pin switches. So let's see here. Let's go to drop. Only supports 3-pin switches, which kind of sucks because it doesn't have the advantage like the Glorious, where it's like relatively cheap. If you get the bare bones kit when that comes out, it'll be about like 70 or 80 bucks. This, for the board alone, I think is between like $150 to $190 for the drop alt. So with that being said, it doesn't have the cost savings advantage like the Glorious has. So this supporting 3-pin switches is fine. This drop alt definitely needs to go to supporting 5-pin switches, because I don't want to have to worry about cutting off the legs of my switches every single time I want to swap them out, especially when I have boards that do support 5. Yeah, I'll put this in the B tier. If they can swap that, then I would bump it up to the A tier. But the drop alt, the aesthetic doesn't really do it for me. Like the light diffusion going all the way around is not that great. So that's one thing that kind of bothers me about it. But otherwise, it looks like a solid board, but you know, a little bit on the expensive side. So this Cooler Master SK630 looks like it has USB Type-C, or does it have USB Type-C? It's in the middle of the board too. When it's a 10 keyless, it should be on the left side, but being in the middle is better than it being on the right side, so I'll give that a pass for now. Let's see here. So low profile switches. So this is a real low profile keyboard that kind of looks detachable, so I'm gonna assume that it is. And yeah, that looks like a real Type-C cable, so cool. Personally, I really like the aesthetic of this keyboard a lot. These keycaps though, they look very similar to the Logitech keycaps. I haven't used them, so I don't know if these are going to be PBT or ABS, but they look ABS from the form factor and from the finish, at least on these renders. So if these are ABS, I would put it in the B tier. If these are PBT, I'll put it in the A tier, because it just looks really, really clean. Now, is this height adjustable though is a real question, because if it's not height adjustable. So this alone prevents it from going up to the S tier, because it is low profile, but it's gonna be so low on your desk, you're probably gonna get some fatigue of like having your hands crouched over so much. Like, yeah. I'll put this firmly in the B tier, even with PBT caps, simply because of the ergonomics. It's going to be similar to like an Apple Magic Keyboard or whatever, which I would put in the F tier. Yeah, it's not ergonomic enough to be with the top keyboards because pretty much most of these are either at a comfortable angle stock or they have adjustability, and this does not feature any adjustment. So the Durgod Hades 68, there's a few different versions. There's one that's basically like an SK64 looks like, but this one, USB Type-C on the left side, has aluminum chassis as well, and PBT keycaps for 140 bucks. So very similar price to like a Ducky Mecha keyboard, but they offer Gateron Reds, Cherry Speed Silvers if you like cherry switches, but more importantly, Gateron Yellows. These are not optical yellows, but you can get stock Gateron yellows in this board. Now, let's see here. Is this one hot swap? I don't know if this board is hot swap or not. I don't think that it is, but even without it being hot swap, as long as you got the right switch, I think you're good and you don't really need it. And Gateron yellows, I wouldn't really see any real reason to swap these out anyways, because as a whole, those switches are good. So if you were to get the Hades 68 with the aluminum case and the Gateron yellows, I will put this in the S tier because I've used it at a friend's house, and the stabilizers are actually pretty good for a stock board. Like, you shouldn't really feel the need to re-lube the stabs, which is good. So lastly, let's talk about the customs real quick. We got the Tofu 65, the Ninja 71, the XO V2 from Monster Gear, the KBD 75, and the Thing 65 V2. I said customs don't count because A, they will cost 5 to 8 times more expensive, maybe more, depending on who you are and what you want to do, than all of these keyboards, and you can make it sound as good or as bad as you want it to sound. So it's really up to you. Like the Thing 65, you can't even buy it, so you gotta wait for it to be in stock, and then you have to wait months to get it, because I'm pretty sure that keyboard and a lot of other keyboards are group buys unless they're in stock with small quantities, and then you gotta wait, 6 months, a year, whatever to get it. So customs as a whole, they have their own problems, and their biggest problem is gonna be availability. So yeah, they're expensive enough as it is, but there's just really long wait times. But the reason why I included like the KBD 75 and the Ninja 71 and the Tofu, those are regularly in stock, and you can go on KBD Fans or Monster Gear's website or any other like companies that sell like these DIY kits and buy them yourself and customize the crap out of them if you want. This XO V2 is from Monster Gear as well. That was like a really premium keyboard that they built earlier this year, and it looks fantastic. If they come out with another version that's exactly like the V2, I'll probably buy it, even though it'll probably be pretty close to like 400 bucks, but it just looks so good. Watch Wildcat's video, I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to see what I'm talking about, but that board just looks fantastic. But in terms of the boards on this list that I would recommend to somebody looking for a new keyboard and from like a big OEM, pretty much everything in the S, A, and B tier is what I'm gonna recommend. The Alt maybe not, just because like I feel like it could use a little bit more work, but if somebody really liked the look of the Alt, you can't really stop them from getting it. And it does look cool, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the aesthetic. I just wish the light diffusion was better, and that would bump it up tiers. But other than that, I'm pretty confident in all the placements of all these boards, because the way that I make these tier lists is going in order of what I would personally realistically recommend to somebody if they were to say, hey, what do you think of this keyboard? I would say, it's good, but X, Y, and Z is better for whatever reason that might interest you. But if you like this, that, and the third, you'll probably be happy with your purchase. This is how I do my rankings on the tier list. Sorry guys, that is gonna be it for this video. If you guys enjoy, be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you are new to the channel. Let me know what other tier lists I should do in the future. You guys seem to like these videos, so let's keep it going. Sorry this one took so long to come out. I've just been really busy, and I have so much stuff that like I filmed and just don't have time to edit yet, and I'm like pushing myself to finish editing it with the limited amount of time that I have. So we're working on it. Ton of uploads coming. I'll see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to sub, drop a like, go on my Discord, share the video. I'll see you in the next one.